So this website is the website of a fictional company called Sketchy Solutions, and it's a pretty simple site, really. That's just a way to see what the company is doing right now and see what they're about and what kind of jobs they're offering. So what we're seeing now is a user has visited the site and they're not signed in any way. So what they can see is, first of all, the start page, where we have posts made by employees that work for this company, and we can click on one of them and we can see the post itself and also see who what employee wrote this post. And as you can see, there's a decent amount of posts, but this is the basics of the main homepage. You can also click more stories, and then you'll see a more of a detailed list with all the posts, because there's a lot more than just 5 posts that show on the webpage. You can also see what type of job openings are currently available, and if you want more information about a specific job, you simply click it and you will get a little more detailed text about the job. And you also get this application form where you can fill in your personal details. So we will just go ahead and do that, and we'll simply upload a resume as well. So then we'll just hit apply, and we'll get this message saying you have applied. So what you're looking at now is the About page, which simply is just a bit of information about the company and its employees. From here, you can see we get simple text that explains what the company is, and we can also get a list of the employees at the company. And if we want more information about one of these employees, we can simply click the card, and we will get to see a list of the posts that this user has made as well. And if we're one of these employees that work at this company, we have access to some more functionality than the regular user who just visits the site. So say, for example, that we are this Joe Sketch here. We can go to the sign in page and sign in. And now, as you can see, we're signed in as Joe Sketch. And we have a couple of more options here. We have the ability to make a new post, such as one of these. We have the ability to post a new job listing as well. So we'll take a look at those features first. New post is pretty simple. You'll get a simple form that is just title and content of the text or the post. So let's just say content. And as well, you're also given the option to upload an image. So let's take this image here of coffee because it's pretty, and we'll post it. And you'll see we'll be getting taken immediately to the posted post. So you see the title that we put in, the content that we put in, and the picture that we uploaded becomes this banner image here. And if we go to the home page, we'll see that this new post is now on the front, the first page that is shown when you visit the site. And as I said earlier, you can also make a new job listing. And as you can see, this page looks very similar to that of the post. Title of position, sure. Description, job. And in the same manner as you can do a post, you can post a picture. So let's just post this sky picture here. And you're at the same time you're taken to the job page. And if we go to jobs here, we can also see that this new job opening has appeared down here at the bottom. And one more thing that's different when you're signed in is that you can see who has applied for one of the jobs that you posted. So let's look at, I think it's this coffee analyst job that we applied for earlier. We can see that my application that I did earlier has shown up here. And I can click it, and I can see the title, the name of the applicant, his email address, and I can also click on this here to see the resume that I posted. And while we're signed in, we can also add more users to the page, or more employees to the company. So say, for example, that we're with Joe Sketch here, and we thought that this application was just so good that we want to hire this guy. What we do is we go to the path/register, and that will give us the option of putting in the new user information and creating a new user. This path/register is not available unless you have signed in with an existing user. So that's because we don't want anyone to be able to create a new user on this page. So let's type in my information here. Let's give me the title of CEO because it's my company. I'll do what I want. Let's post a picture of me right there. Type in a really secure password and click register. And now we see that I'm now signed in with my new user account. I can see my own profile. If I go to About, you see my picture shows up here as well. So now I am officially an employee of Sketchy Solutions. Now, so if we move on to the actual code of the application, the application is built using something called a mean stack. And what this means is that the app is essentially divided into two components: a front-end application that's built in Angular 7, and a backend app that's built in Node. So the front-end application doesn't really do any kind of interaction with our Mongoose database. That's all handled by the Node backend. We're going to see it later that we have services on the Angular frontend which are used to communicate with the Node backend, which then in turn retrieves or posts new data to the database. So if we start by looking at the front-end application, the Angular application, we can see that we have all these folders here. Now, each of these folders represents an Angular component or sometimes a group of similar components that share properties. One of the ones that are used the most is these card components over here. We have the card is like a general purpose UI component for displaying like a preview of a post or a job listing or something like that. So it's like a basic class that just has properties such as title, text, path, which is the link that this card will lead you to when you click it, author, and picture. And then we have, a simple bootstrap card that simply displays all that information in a somewhat elegant way. And this, we also have a couple of variants on this card. One is called the picture card and the user card, and they both inherit their base properties and base functionality from the card component, but they're slightly different. The user card, which is meant for displaying an employee of the company, it has some different CSS, which causes the picture to be round instead of square. And the picture card is using the picture as a background image rather than putting it next to the text. But the functionality is the same, so they inherit all their functionality from the card component. But the cards are not the only component that we have. We have quite a lot of them. Some of them, like the about page and the home page, are actual pages on the site. And some other things like the footer and header are more like, well, components, part of a page rather than an entire page. The way these UI components get the data that is used to populate the page is done using a couple of services. So the components themselves don't ever talk to the backend. That is all done through these services down here. One of the most important services that's in our application is this authentication service. This service allows us to make authenticated requests to the Node backend, which allows us to do things such as logging in and registering a new user and any kind of user authentication, really. So we have the most important function in this service is this request function here, which can be used to make post and or get requests to a specified path. So this is what we use mainly to communicate with our Node backend. So this function can do either a post or a get request to a specified path. If the data at the specified path requires authentication, then we can pass a boolean that just says that we need to use authentication. And if it's a post request that we're doing, we can also pass the data that we want to post. So this function simply does one of those requests, and it also, if you can see here, that if it receives a token response, which happens when the user signs in or when the user registers a new user, it will save the JVT token. That is what our page uses to authenticate the user. So our authentication service is also used inside this authguard service here. Now this authguard service is only used in one part of the application, and that's in the app module. We import it up here. And this is used to, we use this can activate function, which is inside the authguard, to block any route that we don't want unauthenticated users to be able to visit. So we have things such as register, because we don't want anyone to be able to register a new user. Making new posts is also something we only want signed in users to be able to do, and making new job listings as well. And then we also have our job service and our post service, which is what we use to either, get existing jobs, post new jobs, apply for jobs, so on and so forth. And posts is also pretty self-explanatory, making new posts, getting posts, and so on and so forth. Now, as you can see, both of these services, they inherit from authentication service. So they have this request function I talked about earlier. And as you can see, we put it to well use. It's actually pretty much the only function that is used, because that's really all we need to do. These functions are just for either retrieving or passing new data to or from the Mongoose database. So if we switch tracks and take a look at the Node backend instead, we can see that we divided it into models, controllers, and yeah, that's pretty much it. So models are different data types essentially. For example, job, application, user, so on and so forth. These simply specify the structure of that specific data types. So, for example, for a user, we have username, first name, last name, title, a user profile picture, and a password, specifying what kind of type it is and whether or not it's required or not. User schema in particular, I think, is a bit different than the other one because it also has these functionalities for comparing passwords, hashing passwords, and generating JVT tokens. But for the most part, these models are just specifying the structure of the data types. So what we're looking at now is more or less the main file of the Node backend, where we specify all of our routes for our gets and our post request, and we also decide which routes are allowed without authentication, and exactly what function in what controller should be used when we visit one of these paths. Even though this is sort of the main file of the Node app, most of the functionality lies within these different controllers over here. So for example, we have our auth controller, which has functions such as login and register. So I mean, these are functions that they retrieve or they are sent for in the sake of the register class, they're sent user data, and it tries to query the MongoDB database using Mongoose to see if there's a pre-existing user with that username, and if not, it will create a a new user and pass back a JVT token. And similar sort of situation for login, except there we don't receive user details, we receive user credentials, and we try to query the database to find if those user credentials are correct. And similarly to register, return a JVT token if that is the case. So all of our different controllers have quite different functions, as you can all see, depending on what's needed for that specific data type. But generally speaking, what most of them do is either retrieve data from the MongoDB database or post data, new data to the database. So let's take a look at that database then. So our database is a MongoDB database where we have these 4 different collections for our 4 different data types, which are posts, which are the news posts that are on the front page, and then we also have our users, our jobs, and the applications for those jobs. So generally, the MongoDB data structure is kind of, well, it's pretty intuitive. And as you can see here, we can take a look at one entry here, and generally speaking, like it says what his username is, it says what his name is, his last name, his title, and the picture, that's his profile picture, and his encrypted password as well. The password is more or less the only thing that's encrypted, because this is supposed to be just publicly available information. Like, it's not like a social media where you want user credentials to be encrypted. It doesn't matter if someone's job title leaks out. I mean, it's publicly available, and that makes my job a bit easier as well, so I'm not complaining. A lot of these different entries in these MongoDB collections have connections to one another. So the way that we connect that is usually done, for example, here in our application collection, we can take a look at one of these applications and we can find the job ID, which is the ID of the job that this application belongs to. So if we look at this collection or this job ID here, we can go to our jobs collection, and we should be able to find this ID here. So then we know that the application that we looked at was an application for this job opening. And one of the last things that I want to talk about is the node models, or the most important node models that we use on our backend. Passport.js is one of them. It's a node model for doing user authentication. And as you can see, we use it for like comparing passwords between comparing the password that the user has provided with the one that's already stored in the database. So it's a pretty important part of our authentication step. We also have Molter, which is the node model that we use for managing file uploads. So as you can see here, we have what was called a storage strategy, where if the file is passed into any of these paths, API post new, API jobs new, and API auth register, then we know that the incoming file is an image, and we will store it in our images folder, which, as you'll see later, is publicly available, and a user can download these images even if they are not signed in. But if it's not incoming to any of these paths, then we know that this is a resume that was passed for a job applicant. And so this image, or this resume, is stored inside the uploads directory. And the uploads directory is not publicly available, and you need to be signed in order to download those files. So we can see that in our index.js. You have the upload here, which is the storage strategy that we talked about just now. And you can see that we allow for uploads on specific paths, such as upload, auth register, posts, jobs, and application/new. So that's for uploading these pictures. And then we also have these two paths down here, which is for downloading pictures. And as you can see, the uploads directory requires authentication, but the downloads, the images directory does not.